Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, this is another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show, and I am super excited for this particular episode as we've got a very special guest, Marisa Murgatroyd from Live Your Message. Now, I've been following Marisa for a very long time. I have my own journey of transitioning from a one-to-one expert into being a one-to-many content and information business creator, and her frameworks, her systems have been super valuable, and we haven't had the opportunity to have this conversation. So, Marisa, I want to thank you for all of the amazing stuff that you put out into the world. But I'm very excited for us to talk about the opportunity for other experts to be able to monetize their intellectual property, organize it into courses, group programs, and ways to essentially put value and leverage on that information that they've been crafting over the course of their career. So, looking forward to getting stuck into it. Marisa, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. I was just saying, I just coming back from Australia. So now I'm here at 7 o'clock at night in Texas, and I'm a morning person. So if I sound a little less enthusiastic than you, it's not because I'm not super passionate about all this stuff.
That's fine. It was great to have you here. I appreciate you making the time. So for those who don't have the pleasure of knowing you and your experience, do you want to give us a little bit of your origin story and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, well, I certainly have a few different origin stories, but I think the one that really relates to financial freedom is kind of the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. So I was working as a documentary filmmaker, like a producer and director inside of a production company. And I remember just this ordinary Tuesday morning, I was there at my desk working on a film, and my boss charges in at around 12:30 in the afternoon, fashionably late as usual. And she had forgotten her power cable at home. And she said, Marisa, could I borrow your power cable? I forgot mine at home. And I said, well, she's sorry, I didn't have my laptop plugged in and I need to finish this edit. And can you borrow somebody else's? And she looked at me and she said, Marisa, that computer you're working on, I own that computer. And that power cord, I own that too. So give me the power. And basically, this request turned into a demand. And I had that realization that I'd been spending so much time building her dream and building her company versus building my dream and building my company. And it wasn't just me, that so many people end up going into jobs that don't fulfill them at the deepest possible level, that aren't a match for giving their gifts in the world. And I do believe that everyone has gifts, and that most people don't give them to the extent that they're capable, and that that's a big disservice to the world, really, especially in times like this where all gifts are needed, right? And so that set me out on my journey of just realizing, maybe the skills that I have on making things look good and sound good and telling good stories could be useful in another context. And the interesting thing is, I didn't think that those skills had a lot of value because I'd been raised being taught that being an artist was that I would never make money, and it was completely impractical. But what I didn't realize is that the skills that didn't have a lot of perceived value in one context could have massive value in the other, and that the skills that I'd just been building, following my heart and my passion, were actually the basis of all business and marketing. And that when I turned my creativity, my way with words, my ability to kind of vision and imagine and create experiences and design all sorts of stuff into a business, well, holy smokes, watch out. In one context, I couldn't charge $30 an hour for what I did. And then in another context, I was able to charge over $30,000 a day. And so it was just night and day what, finding the right context for my skills meant. And that I could, regardless of what anyone else told me, really build something kind of amazing.
That's phenomenal. And look, I think this is so relevant, particularly in our space. Our clients are service-based business owners. Most of them are either corporate or employment escapees, where they've had an experience like you've had, and they go, wow, I should go out and do this for myself. And I think the underlying philosophy is if I'm good at what I do, I will do it for myself. But it's not that easy. And I think as a business owner, particularly as a traditional business owner doing kind of one-to-one transactional style business, there's not a lot of leverage and it is incredibly difficult. And particularly in this day and age, it is often getting commoditized. and therefore margins are getting squeezed. And I think for so many businesses, they sleep on the opportunity that exists in packaging and monetizing their intellectual property. So, do you want to run us a bit through your philosophy of how you've been able to do this, to take this kind of creative skill set that has definitely been commoditized
Yeah.
and been able to turn this into this phenomenal business that's done multi eight figures in sales?
Yeah, 100%. So I think that a lot of it is figuring out what is the result that I can help other people get. And what's a result that I can help people get that's not necessarily replaceable easily by a done for you service or whatever it happens to be. That the way that I deliver the result is a way that people want to invest in. And so I think part of that is, and what I am seeing the trends is going more and more micro niche, which is either who are you serving that you can uniquely serve? And I've got one woman, for example, she's African American and she's a master at sign language. And she's helping African American people who are hard of hearing actually, learn basically she's doing simultaneous translation of their events and also helping them become translators. And telling the stories of the people they serve. And it's so super niche, but she's very successful at it. So many of my students, the more niche they drill down, whether it's being niche to a certain type of person or being niche with what it is that they do or being niche in how they do it. So in my particular journey, I serve a wide range of people in a wide range of industries in really developing online curriculum and trainings and programs that transform people's lives. But the way that I do it is super unique, which is why I've been able to keep growing and growing and growing, because I'm helping people basically pull from the worlds of apps and games in Silicon Valley and make hyper engaging, almost addictive courses. So the one thing that we're seeing is that, people can Google anything, right? They can chat GPT anything, they can YouTube anything and find a whole lot of content about it. And so what people are paying for is not content. They're paying for results and they're paying for an experience, right? And the good news is that if information alone changed our lives, we would all be living in Googletopia. Seriously, we would all be millionaires already. We would have ideal, perfect relationships. We'd have like six packs and everything else. We wouldn't have any health issues. We would be living perfect lives. But the truth is, the vast majority of us are not able to get those results simply by Googling or asking ChatGPT to tell you the steps to do something, especially if it's something that has some level of resistance or need for human intuition. You know, as all this stuff was happening, we created a whole bunch of AI tools and we embedded into all of our programs that can help people brainstorm around their business and write messaging and create first drafts. But it's so interesting because my students bring this stuff that has been generated by AI, and I'm like looking at them like, really? If you try to say that to people, they're just going to run the other direction because AI doesn't have that sixth sense, that gut intuition of this is a match for this particular person, right? That I believe these words coming out of this person's mouth or whatever it happens to be, or the kind of person that they're serving, this is really going to match. And so there's still a lot of need for how especially as a teacher, a coach, a mentor, you can support someone getting a specific result. And that's something that happens in so many industries. Like if you look at the trades, for example, the original trades had the apprenticeship system, right? So many high level, say finance or politics, they have mentors. In so many realms of life, you learn from another person who's developed mastery in the area that you want to go. And that person really loves to say, support someone else in developing those skill sets. But so many people approach courses as these information dumps because that's what we learn sitting in schools. But the truth is, what a real kind of course or program is it's helping someone get a specific result, complete a project, achieve a goal, enhance their performance, develop skills, develop status. It's something really specific. And so many people lose sight of that because they're like, oh, let me make a course. What is a course? A course is about providing information. And then, no, that's not anything different than what you're going to get on Google or YouTube or ChatGPT. So how can you get someone a very specific result or for a specific kind of person or in a very specific way? And how can you do it where the experience is really phenomenal and you do everything you possibly can to get someone that result. So the information not only sticks, but you help someone apply it in the context of their life or whatever it is that they're doing. So they get that transformational result. So there's still plenty of room for that. But what I will say is that people are expecting more. You know, the whole idea of a home study course where you set it and forget it and people just buy it and you create passive income while you sleep, that doesn't really, it never really existed to begin with. It was a great dream that a lot of people sold people on in order to get rich themselves, but it was never actually the case because even with content, it ages and it goes stale. Like if you look at funnels, you know, people who are, their ads go stale within 30 days. So you have to constantly be kind of innovating and co-creating with other people. And you have to be willing to show up inside of your own programs. So when you monetize IP, what many people think is it's this asset that's just going to start, you know, accumulating money over and over and over again. But it's really about what's the phenomenal experience that you take people through that they may have some level of access to you, but at the very least, or your coaches or the people on your team. But how can you get someone a result and how can you do it in a way that they're going to want to lean into and stay a part of? Because then you also activate back-end sales, which is people buying from you a second time, a third time, a fourth time. And that's where you start to have a really lucrative, profitable business. It's not someone buying one thing for 17 bucks from you once. It's creating, you know, the best possible opportunity for people to get the result in the particular area that you are an expert in such a way that they want to keep coming back to get deeper and higher level results. That's kind of my philosophy.
Makes so much sense. And I think this is how we future-proof against AI, because it's my thought process that we're going to get to a point where the creation of content is going to increase at such an exponential rate because of AI. But as you've mentioned already, it's crap. Like it's fluffy, it's superficial, and people like us who have a level of affluence are going to be overwhelmed. And we want depth, we want context, we want transformation. And therefore, we'll look towards trusted thought leaders who are experts in particular verticals, and we will subscribe to them and only listen to them for their area of expertise because we trust it. And I think that's the value of the future. But I guess the big challenge here that I see for a lot of these people, particularly transitioning from one to many, is that they don't necessarily get the leverage that they want. So, what's the key to creating a really profitable and leveraged? It's obviously not complete end of the spectrum of just building assets and leaving them there dormant, but it's also not seeing everyone one to one and having a fully stacked diary doing 80 hours a week. So, how do we find that equilibrium and have a successful and scalable business?
Yeah, so honestly, I think that I've got this little chart, and let me see if I can kind of grab it over here. But I think that there's multiple ways to create scale. And it's really about finding the way to create scale that's right for you. And so this is it. I say revenue equals volume times price, right? So some people simply go super premium, right? And what this is it's high priced here, but low volume. So you could say, well, that's not exactly leverage. You're not helping a lot of people. But if you're making 100K a pop for a particular engagement and you have 10 of those, I think that's a lot of leverage. Because if you look at time for money and for return, you can actually have a really amazing business there. But the question is, what would people pay you $100,000 for?
Mm.
Right? So when I go in and I do consulting now, I spend about a day to prepare and then I spend a day supporting someone, but that's a $60,000 investment. So one day with me. But I know that I can help someone up level a program to the level where it's going to be wildly more profitable. It's going to get way more people to success. And then on the other side of that, they're going to have way more repeat sales, right? So I figured out what someone going to invest that amount of money for. That's leverage on my life experience. That's leverage on my expertise. That's leverage on the thing that I can do better than almost anybody, right? Now, then there is, I say the one to few. This is one to one. This is one to few. This is one to many. One to few is sort of kind of mid price points and mid volume. So you can create a smaller group program. So for example, I mean, you mentioned a lot of people starting with one-on-one services. Say you've got like a social media marketing agency or something, and you've got this group process you can take people through. Or you have a team who's supporting, different clients and they're each doing their small piece. So you're still getting leverage because it's still kind of a one to few approach where, your time is leveraged either through the team or either through a group of clients, right? And then there's the one to few, and it's what many people think of when they start to leverage IP, which is a lower price point in high volume. But even within this, you can kind of go in any particular direction here. And so I think that the main challenge people have is they expect like to instantaneously transform their business model. So, for example, like when I start with someone and they're primarily making 100% of their revenue from one-on-one, we might say, well, can we in the next 3 months shift so 20% of your revenue comes from one to few or one to many, right? That might be the first step. And that could be, well, 20% of the existing revenue, or it could be an extra 20% beyond what it is that you currently have if your goal is a higher level. And then maybe within 2 to 3 years, we might flip completely the model. So 20% is then one-on-one and 80% is from one of these other means. But I think what I see people come in with is these unrealistic expectations with no platform, no audience, no expertise in these domains. All of a sudden, they're going to instantly snap their fingers. And if you had, say, $100,000 coming in per year, then all of a sudden you're going to have $100,000 program business. And sometimes that happens, but sometimes that happens out of the gate because someone has some low-hanging fruit audiences to tap into, but then they can't sustain it because they've picked all the fruit off the lower rungs of the trees. So you have to start to gradually build your platform alongside of that to be able to sustain that. And in addition to finding one really amazing product line that you can become known to, a couple of marketing channels that really work for you to double down on. So there's like a process within this that you have to kind of work and navigate. And like I said, I think a lot of people try to wing it and don't, might choose their niche in a way that it's too broad or too fuzzy, or the value proposition isn't super clear, and then people aren't buying it, or they get all the low-hanging fruit, then don't have a way to sustain those sales and those marketing channels. So there's a lot of different levels to what needs to happen in order to kind of make this transition. But I think that what we're seeing now is that you can still build an incredible, business based off your IP. But I think there's a great book by, what's his name? The 10X is greater than Benjamin, 10X is greater than 2X, right?
Dan Sullivan,
And
right?
it's like, yeah, Dan Sullivan wrote it with Benjamin, whatever his last name is. I forgot for
Hardy,
the
I
moment.
think it is.
Yes, Hardy, you're right.
Yes.
And basically, you have to be willing to be that much better, especially now with so much being generated by AI. And even Mr. Beast says that. He says he tries to make his video 10% better, and the views he gets are exponential. Just taking that extra time, obsessing over something, making it that much better. And when you have a product that's that much better, then you have incredible reviews, all of that. But also, it does take time to get something to be that good. Like my signature course, I've been teaching it I'm going into the ninth year that I've been teaching it. A couple of years ago, I re-recorded the entire thing. Then I added AI into it. Now I'm adding, I just every year, like I add something to it to make it better and better and better. But there was one other thing I was going to say that also intimidates people. Like you don't necessarily start out with something great. So I talk about taking this MVP approach where you want to start with the most minimum viable form of whatever it is that you do. So whatever that core solution is, the core solution of a plane is if you put wings on something, will it fly, right? The most famous example of an MVP for a core solution would be Airbnb. Airbnb tested the concept during one event, an industrial revolution, like industrial design conference in San Francisco, one city with one house, their own apartment, right? And they bought airbeds basically, which was why it's called Airbnb. And they sold out like 3 or 4 airbeds. They made their rent in a single event. And they tested the concept as, will people buy rooms in other people's houses on the internet, basically. And they said, well, yeah, they will. And then they scaled from there, like to more places in San Francisco, right? Then they added additional cities in the US, and then they went global, and then they added experiences, and they just did this. And so a lot of people try to build things one piece at a time, and it's this huge vision, but they're not just testing the concept first with something super, super simple. I had another student with an Instagram makeover course. She has sold over 10,000 of these now, but she started with just doing it one-on-one for a few people, Instagram makeovers. They bought it one-on-one, and then she turned it into a group program, and then she turned it into a like 197 really scalable program, right? So it was like testing a concept here. So as a service provider, you've got a huge advantage if you've been testing some models and some signature systems for a while, that you've already got this like proof of concept in a one-to-one mode. Now we got to create a proof of content, proof of concept in like a one-to-few or one-to-many mode, right? So much can be leveraged based on what you've already created. So that to me is leverage too. So leverage doesn't just look like a one-to-many model. It's like leveraging the IP that you've already created, the background that you already have, of the credibility that you've already built, and then transferring it over to new business models.
Beautiful. I think that's so important because I think, particularly for us as experts, we obsess over the IP. And I think for many
Yeah.
people, they spend too much time developing something that's untested and they need to fail fast and fail forward, which then leads us into the next part, which is really the acquisition systems and the marketing. One of the things that I've really respected you for is your ability to launch and to leverage other people's lists to be able to grow and scale your business. And I think it's an underutilized platform for people. In your experience, what do you think is the best way for, say, a new person getting into these information businesses to market? Is it trying to go through down the launch route or the joint venture route, or do you feel that there's other ways and strategies that can allow people to test the market and try and grow?
Yeah, well, certainly being if you have access to other people's audiences or relationships that you can form and can test with other people's audiences, that's amazing. But I also believe, and I've seen over and over again, that everybody already knows everyone they need to at least create $100,000 in sales. And that sometimes, basically testing with the low-hanging fruit of, people that you're already connected to in some way, shape, or form is enough. Because a lot of times, if you're trying to test and make your first, say, $10,000 in sales, and say you have a $500 or $1,000 program, like you don't need that many sales. We're talking about 10 to 20 sales, right? And so a lot of times people try to build what I call like go for Lamborghini marketing, but when all they need, I have this concept called golf cart marketing, is all you need is a golf cart to get to the grocery store. And if we're looking at a small number of sales, make some golf cart marketing to start with. All right. And sometimes that can be what I call chatterboxing with people that you're already connected to test the concept, even if you don't have a big following or a big list. I mean, I know we met through Taki Moore in Boardroom. Taki basically chatterbox all the freaking time. Like he just on his personal, Facebook is kind of posting these just, click this if you want this, right? And he's doing it in really, really simple ways, not even using a lot of cold traffic, using organic reach through people he's already connected to by sharing of himself. So that's also super, super easy way. A lot of people resist it because it feels too like personal and they want to just throw some money at it. But very rarely have I seen someone be able to make pay, especially in this environment, paid ads work on an unproven concept, right?
Yeah.
So if you can test it either with your own, here's another one of my little diagrams. This is what I call your circle of influence. So marketing is easiest at the center of your circle of influence when you're really, you know, marketing to people who are friends or associates. They're connected to you in some way, shape, or form. And then if you go to friends of friends, like other people's audiences, that's still easier, but it gets hardest when you're talking about strangers from the internet. Now, some people can do that really well and make a paid ad model work, but most people need to really test and prove a concept, closer to the center of the circle of influence before they can make this work here. Because right now, especially, we're competing in the US right now, we're competing against, Trump and Kamala Harris, basically. We're competing basically for ad spend. They're like buying all of the ad inventory. And so we have to compete against people with gigantic pockets. This whole idea of like the corporations coming onto social, it's happened, right? Now everything costs so much more than it used to. So I say the closer you can start to the center here to test your concept, the easier it's going to be. And the more you get here, the more your marketing has to be super, super super dialed in. That doesn't happen usually in the first couple iterations. That happens with a launching over and over and over and over again, watching what works, watching what doesn't, and also pivoting with the market as it changes. So I don't recommend going here for a while. And I think this is where so many newbies just bomb, is they go out here, and partly because it feels less vulnerable than going here. They want to stay that closet entrepreneur that doesn't tell any of their friends or family what they're doing, and then they go and try to spend money on the internet acquiring strangers, and they just can't compete with sophisticated ad buyers who've been doing this for years or have really qualified teams attached to them, right?
Yeah, and I resonate with that. I've made all of those mistakes, and I think being vulnerable and sharing value in your network, and then being able to ask for a return in terms of some of that goodwill that you create is the easiest way to grow this business. And then once you nail that and you validated an organic offer, then paid advertising is a great multiplier and magnifier of that. But that's later down the line, and you're right, it is very challenging to get right. And look, I
And the
just want to
people who
finish.
fight me on this, by the way, all the freaking time, and then like
Yes,
years later, they come back to me. I should have just listened.
exactly.
Right? All the time, because they want it to be this like push a button, make the money, not have to be vulnerable and authentic and share. And it's scary. But I tell you, like over and over again, when people wake up to the fact that you need to do a little bit of groundwork and footwork and legwork and like, um, they do it, they realize, oh my gosh, it really doesn't
The
have to be as hard as I was making out to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The tried and true is tried and true for a reason. And I think this is a great reminder that, guys, this is one of the best wealth accelerators that allows you to create an ancillary or satellite income to your core service business, or even make a full transition out of your service business into a leveraged business model. And because it can be so profitable and accelerate your path to financial freedom, it's a great way for you to build wealth and manufacture that financial freedom faster. It's something that we've done, and we've built a multi-seven-figure information business using these principles. So it's just a matter of following the right people and making sure you have a proven methodology, because it is a slippery slope, and you want people that are going to help you get there faster. So, Marisa, we've covered so much value here. And look, I know that for people listening to this, one of the things they're going to be stuck on is really deciding on that niche. And I know people they get too general because they want to help everyone, and they get this first building block wrong, which then cascades into getting so many other things wrong and slowing down their progress. So, have you got a resource or something that you could share with our audience that would help them dial that in?
Yeah, 100%. So I have spent years just studying the market and realized that pretty much 99% of all successful online courses, programs, IP fall into 20 mega niches. Now, from the mega niche, you got to niche down into the micro niche in the core solution. So there's multiple layers, but you got to start with the mega niche. And a lot of people try to have multiple or one that's outside of these 20, and it just doesn't work. So I put together this guide to the 20 most profitable online course mega niches, and you can get it at liveyourmessage.com. That's my company name, / FFS, Financial Freedom Secret. So FFS, it stands for, okay? So liveyourmessage.com / FFS. All right.
Fantastic. We'll include that in the show notes. And guys, I urge you, go jump on Marisa's website, grab that resource and find out more. It's so much easier than you think to delve out of your kind of current center of influence and transition into this information business. It is the future, and it's a phenomenal way for you to add additional income streams. So Marisa, I appreciate you making the time with us today. Now, if you had to share one last golden nugget for our listeners to take away and go and implement, what would that last golden nugget be?
Mm. Well, I think that, this show is really about financial freedom. And one of the things that I've really learned about financial freedom is it's less about the finances and more about the freedom. And I think a lot of people forget that by kind of really putting almost too much money, too much emphasis on money. And one of the things that I've learned about money is from, it's a very famous quote by Zig Ziglar, which you can have everything you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And so I think that value is about helping people get what they want, which will make you very wealthy. But financial freedom is ultimately about getting what you want, right? And so I think people forget that, like to really create an authentic picture of what it is that you really want and why you want it. and then to be fueled by inspiration towards that, because it's a picture of not that I don't need any of this, but what could I do? Like for me, when I think about, I want to be completely financially free by the time I'm 50. I'm 46 right now. And the reason is I'm so excited what I could create when all of my needs are taken care of and there's absolutely no more obligation to work and I just do it out of inspiration and choice. Like I can't even imagine the good stuff that I'm going to create, right? And so it's not even about the money at the end of the day, it's what the money is going to allow me to do. And so you can have everything you want in life if you'll help enough other people get what they want and if you ultimately get what you want, and really figuring out what it is that you want and why you want it to the point where it's exciting is, I think, for me, where it's at, because money for the sake of money never really excited me.
Yeah, that resonates with me so much and so many of our listeners. So I appreciate you sharing that. And guys, remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure that you take the things that you've learnt from this episode and put it into play, and look forward to seeing how you can accelerate your path to financial freedom. Marisa, thanks again, and look forward to catching up again soon.
You too. All right, goodbye.